for today's cup of coffee. Yeah, coffee breaks over back on your heads.
Coffee.
Yeah, it's more back to our regular topics.
Oh, God.
Well, this one has been on my heart for days. And it's like we were given a reprieve.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is important. And that's sort of how some of it's a matter of finding what's in the headlines today. I haven't even looked really at the headlines. But it's been the same thing for days and weeks and months now. Very similar.
Okay. What is it?
Othering.
Oh, where they're trying to, like, dehuman people?
Well, not only that, they are trying to de-people. They're trying to cancel people. And how that led to the Inquisition previously. Now, there's been many forms of the Inquisition.
Mm-hmm.
When we use that term, it's usually people think of the Spanish Inquisition. And so that's the reference that I'm going to use. But there's been many that was the same shit. It's just a different label.
I think that's the only Inquisition that people know of.
It's because a lot of people don't study history. They don't pay attention.
Yeah.
And an ignorant people are very easy to control and manipulate and fool and deceive. That's why study and make yourself approved. And the article that I found is by a website called How Stuff Works. And they have some really cool articles. I have used them as a reference before. And neat stuff. And this was written by Shanna Freeman on February the 5th of 2008. And how the Spanish Inquisition worked. Because we see this and we're like, I would never fall into that. But people are falling into that. And so she writes, the Spanish Inquisition was just one of several inquisitions that occurred between the 12th and 19th centuries. In addition to the term being used for the historical events, the word Inquisition refers to the tribunal court system used by the Catholic Church and some Catholic monarchs to root out, suppress, and punish heretics. Now, Catholics, I'm not picking on y'all. This is history. This is not pointing a finger at anybody. This is just what was done, and we're going to try to figure out why it was done and how it's occurring again today, but not necessarily under the title of the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And these were baptized members of the church who held opinions contrary to the Catholic faith. That's what a heretic was.
Right.
Someone who did not believe according to how the leaders thought they were supposed to believe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're not going to go down that route of the difference between the Septuagint and the... Do what now?
God forbid anyone disagrees.
Uh-huh. Or ask questions. Yeah.
It's not a bad thing to ask questions.
No.
If you ask questions, that means you want to know more.
Yeah. And the Inquisitional system was based on ancient Roman law. It was different from other court systems because the court actually took part in the process of trying the accused. And the term Inquisition has a third meaning also, which were the trials themselves. So... Inquisition, and that's what it is. Inquisitive means to ask questions. But within that, they were not looking for answers. This was to accuse somebody as far as to make them guilty. Mm-hmm. In the eyes of these people, they were already guilty.
Right.
So it was just a dog and pony show. Yeah. And because of its association with torture and execution, Inquisition remains a controversial and difficult subject. More than 100 years after the last official act by the Office of the Holy Inquisition, now called the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the Vatican opened its secret archives to researchers to get at the truth of the Inquisitions. In the next section, we'll find out how it all began. And although early Christians experienced heavy persecution, by the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church had significant religious and political power in Europe. To maintain its authority, the Church suppressed heretics. The church had a very specific definition of heresy. A heretic publicly declared his beliefs based upon what the church considered inaccurate interpretations of the Bible and refused to denounce them, even after being corrected by the authority. And he also tried to teach his beliefs to other people. He had to be doing these things of his own free will, not under the influence of the devil. And it says that the Inquisition officially began with Pope Gregory IX, the Papal Inquisition. And in 1231, he issued a bull or a decree that set up a tribunal court system to try heretics and punish them. He chose the Dominican order, known for being very well educated and knowledgeable about complex theology, to conduct the Inquisition. So those are supposed to be the great thinkers of that time.
But were they really?
Exactly. And like I said, there's a lot of inference. And I can't say what I want to say plainly because of what is going on in our world today. That's why to put it in a historical context and for people, because the people that watch this channel, they are not stupid people.
No.
They get it.
Yes.
And so hopefully they can explain it to others. It's that saying,
if you get it, you get it, and if you don't, you don't.
Mm-hmm. And it says that the Spanish Inquisition was unique in that it was established by secular rulers, King Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella, with the approval of Pope Sixtus IV. The monarchy was Catholic, and it had just united two kingdoms, Aragon and Castile, as a single country in the late 15th century. Reasons for the Inquisition included a desire to create religious unity and weaken local political authorities and familial alliances. And money was another motive. The government made a profit by confiscating the property of those found guilty of heresy. Historians speculate that the monarchy convinced Pope Sixtus the Fourth to allow the Inquisition by threatening to remove Spanish troops from Rome, where they were needed to prevent an attack by Turkey. And many prominent citizens were concerned about their country's religious diversity and had bigoted attitudes towards non-Catholics. Jews were subjected to violent attacks known as pogroms and isolated in ghettos. Many were killed. The Inquisition was officially established in 1478, and the Jews were banished a few years later when King Ferdinand II issued some kind of decree. I'm not even going to... The Alhambra, I think is what it is, in 1492, ordering them to leave on pain of death. Many Jews converted to Catholicism. These converts were sometimes called Moranos, Spanish for pig, and a very derogatory term, and accused of secretly continuing to practice Judaism. They became targets of the Inquisition. Spain conquered Granada, a region populated mostly by Muslim Moors, in the late 15th century. Muslims suffered opposition and persecution similar to that of the Jews until they were banished in 1502 in the name of religious and cultural unity. Muslim converts to Catholicism, called Moriscos, Spanish for Moorish, were targeted for the same reasons as Jewish converts. In the late 16th century, Protestants, mainly Lutherans, also became the target of the Inquisition. Well, this is where you get the othering. You're not like us. Even though you want to be one of us, you're not us. So therefore, you become an outsider. And we're not talking about just religious things right now. Because we have all kinds of little factions going on.
No, it's
everywhere.
Not just religious.
No. And the Spanish Inquisition spread to Spanish-controlled colonies in the New World, including Mexico. Inquisition was abolished in Spain in 1834 by Queen Isabel II. Now, think of this. This went on for over 300 years. And today we're like, how in the hell could they not? Why didn't somebody? Yeah.
It's not.
Okay, and she says,
It just does not make sense.
No. Man's inhumanity to man has been going on since the whole Cain and Abel thing. Well, actually, as far as the Watchers that caused the fall of mankind and taught them the art of war. Yeah. Doesn't matter how it started. It's a matter of what do we do about it. And it says, it's written here, we'll look at how these inquisitional or inquisitorial...
What?
I'm not even... how the trials were conducted.
Okay.
It's rainy here, and it's like I need a nap.
Inquisitional?
Yes. As mentioned earlier, the Inquisitions were tribunals, a type of trial where the judge or judges tries the accused and passes judgment. But these trials were unique in several ways. The accused was required to testify, and he didn't get a lawyer or any assistance. If he refused to testify, the inquisitor took this refusal as proof of his guilt. Anybody could testify against him, including relatives, criminals, and other heretics, and he wasn't told who his accusers were. The accused usually didn't have any witnesses to testify on his behalf because they could also fall under suspicion of being a heretic. He also wasn't always immediately informed of the charges against him. How many times is that happening? That's happening every day in social media.
Yeah.
To the high and to the low. To the people we've heard of, the celebrities, political, whatever it is, to just random strangers.
Yeah, and it's more prominent than ever.
Mm-hmm. And the court, inquisitorial. There we go. Inquisitorial court. I don't know why that's a hard word, but it is. Traveled the country conducting tribunals.
Cool.
This court consisted of 2 inquisitors as well as secretaries and other members. So it's like a traveling circus of death. Mm-hmm. And a typical inquisition began with an edict of grace after a Catholic mass in which the inquisitors explained what constituted heresy and encouraged the congregation to confess any transgressions. Those that confessed escaped torture and extreme punishment, but were forced to denounce any other heretics. Divide and conquer. Divide
Literally.
and conquer. How dare you stand up for that person? They've been accused. There's no evidence. There's no proof. But because that somebody said that somebody did something 25 years ago, even though there's no evidence, no proof, they don't even have to show their face as somebody that's the accuser.
No.
They're automatically guilty because somebody said something. It says that heresy could be definitively proven if the accused was caught in a heretical act, but the goal of the inquisitor was always to extract a confession or admission of guilt. Inquisitors were not only better educated and better versed in the Bible than their subjects, because let's take it out of the original languages and put it into a language that only a very select few understood. They were also specifically trained in how to question them in confusing or leading ways. We call those people attorneys today. We call them politicians today.
I think they should be called snakes.
Often the accused wasn't
Snakes.
clever enough to answer the inquisitor's questions and prove his innocence, but the inquisitor still needed a satisfactory confession. Accused heretics could be imprisoned for years until one was obtained. In 1252, Pope Innocent IV had issued a bull that allowed the use of torture to get a confession. In the 16th century, the Spanish inquisitors took advantage of this bull. This task was often assigned to local authorities, but the inquisitors themselves participated as well because they were sadists. There is nothing worse than somebody that is working for the devil that is putting the label of Christ over themselves as they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. That's disgusting.
If the accused confessed while being tortured, he had to confess again while not under torture for the confession to count. Torture was only supposed to be used if all other attempts of obtaining proof of heresy had been exhausted. We'll look at these different forms of torture next. And I don't know that we will. Because I'm looking at Kid's face, and it's like, no, I knew this one was going to be difficult for him. Everybody has heard some of the things that was being done during that period of time. And shunning, that's one of the things that's being done today.
Yeah, shunning.
Shaming, humiliation. And some of the things, their imprisonment is being used and has been used for a long time. Because when you look at the legal, we have a legal industry. We don't have a legal system in America. We've not had for a long time.
No.
And as far as these plea bargains and stuff, and as far as attorneys trying to give a vigorous defense for the accused, that's a lie. That's what's supposed to happen. That's not what happens unless you've got big money.
That is true.
Because
that is very, very true.
Yeah. It's this industry of imprisoning poor people and profiting off of their poor families while the person is imprisoned. Kid and I have been going through this for years.
Yeah. Very much so.
Because if you've got a loved one that has a mental illness, guess what, folks? The court does not care.
No.
There is no fair on that. Anyhow, it says that, let me go back and see if I can, as far as the Protestant Reformation. All right. While most people think of a single Inquisition, history isn't quite that simple. Most of the Inquisitions had little to do with creating unity. Instead, the goal was to maintain authority and discourage rebellious behavior. In other words, free thought. The Protestant Reformation in the 1520s and other Christian reform movements contributed to the idea of a single Inquisition masterminded directly by the Catholic Church. Because Spain was the greatest political power in Europe in the 16th century, reformers focused on the Inquisitions that took place in that country. In some cases, they exaggerated circumstances of the Inquisitions to increase anti-Catholic and therefore anti-Spanish sentiment. Artists and philosophers of the 17th and 18th centuries took issue with the Inquisition's suppression of freedom and creativity. Some of the misunderstandings surrounding the Inquisitions came from their symbolic or fictional accounts. The auto de fe, for example, was a long ritual comprising Catholic Mass, prayer, and a reading of the sentence of the accused. This was carried out in both the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisitions. If the sentence included death, the execution took place separately from the auto de fe. However, paintings such as Saint Dominic presiding at an auto de fe by somebody showed all stages of the Inquisition as happening at once. So what it was, there was propaganda.
That 100% was propaganda.
And it says it's interesting because, these factions, these otherings. And as far as the Protestant Reformation, and that had to do with Martin Luther and all that bunch of stuff, and that was one of the things as far as them printing the Bible in a language that, you had King James and the whole Gutenberg press, that was a whole thing of that, so that the average person that could read, or the lower educated people, could read for themselves. Mm-hmm. Even though King James inserted his own name and some of his buddies' names as opposed to the Jewish names. that could be 9,000 cups long, which we will not do because there's lots of people. Mark Biltz, if you ever listen to Mark Biltz, folks, he can explain a lot of things. So could Michael Heiser. I miss his presence on this planet. I really, really do, especially in today's world. So it's like you had people that were persecuting people, and then you decided that they didn't want to persecute people. And the ones that were persecuted, instead of them learning from it and going, oh, don't do this, this is wrong, what do? They go on to persecute people. And you had the Salem witch trials. What were they? Those were Protestants. What were they doing? It was another Inquisition. Same result. Somebody said somebody did something without any proof, any evidence, and people died.
Yeah.
Usually in horrific ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so today we've got these inquisitions. We've got these factions of power. Oh, you've got to believe us because we have these letters behind our name. You can't question us. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to think for yourself? That's dangerous. You've got to do this. You can't say this on this video. How dare you? We've gotten social media and stuff, like I said, that people digging up, dredging up, going back till the beginning of their existence.
So literally.
Trying to drag forth sins. Now, when I use the word sin, folks, that's actually an archery term, which means to miss the mark.
Well, that was like someone I was watching recently. They brought up this person they had beef with, or the person they had past beef with, but tried to squash it since.
Mm-hmm.
They were just like, they got asked about it. And they were like, oh, I don't remember. Just as a way to just pass it off because they didn't want to cause any more ruckus with that.
Right.
They didn't want to dredge it up or anything.
Right.
Person that was also involved got majorly butthurt because they just simply said, oh, I don't remember.
Right.
And then literally laid everything out on the table, except it was just distortion of the actual truth.
Right.
Just completely trying to rewrite what actually happened.
Absolutely.
Even though there's video evidence, screenshot evidence, everything.
Yeah. And it's like Kid and I were talking earlier, and this amazing encounter in the Bible where the woman was dragged in front of Christ. She had been taken in the act of adultery, which by Jewish law meant that she could have been stoned to death. Now, for people who don't know, to stone someone to death is a very painful death.
Yes.
And it's like they drug her out, but they didn't drag the man out. Because the whole thing was for them to try to trap Christ. And it's like, that was the whole thing. It was a trap. And they're like, by law, we can do this. And Christ bent down and he started writing in the sand. And it doesn't say what he wrote. And he looked up at the accusers and he said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And I've told Kid, I said, I think it's purposeful that we don't know what he was writing. I thoroughly believe that he was writing the secret sins of every person that had accused that woman. Because it says that your secret sins will find you out.
That's more than likely what he said, what he wrote down.
And he looked at the woman and he said, woman, where are your accusers? And I'm paraphrasing, folks, if y'all want the actual Google search. And there was no one left. And he said, neither do I condemn you. He said, go and sin no more. And we've got people trying to accuse people using Christ's name. I understand why there's a world of people that have been wounded by religion because he has been very misrepresented.
Yes.
But we've got a world that has forsaken morality and ethics, and that they think it's okay to do these horrendous things to somebody without it ever coming back on them. There's universal laws. You do harm to somebody else, it's going to come back on you.
3 times. Sometimes more than that.
And it's like,
It depending on how big it is, it's going to come back on you hard.
Sure. Absolutely. And it's one of those things, if somebody asks me, have you ever, I'm going to give an account. There's a lot of things I've done that I'm very, very ashamed of. I'm very grateful internet was not a thing when I was young. I know where I've been. I'm chief among sinners, like the Apostle Paul, which is why I could never point a finger at anybody else. But it's this awareness. You don't other people.
Ever.
Even if they're doing something that seems... We're even supposed to pray for these people that are persecuting us. Those that are trying to take away freedom of speech or freedom of thought or freedom of anything. They don't understand that's witchcraft. That's some of the blackest magic when you are taking away somebody else's free will.
Yeah.
If they don't think that that's not going to come back on them, now you've got a lot of them that they honestly, I think that they are so deluded, they think that they're trying to help humanity. And they're not. They are totally, completely deceived.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, the social media.
Millions of people deceived. Just like back in Bible times.
Very much so. And so we're seeing modern inquisitions, and it's a matter of the responsibility. And you got to wonder, there were very few of the people that were the they. And there was a whole hell of a lot of the other ones that were the us.
Yeah.
And that there is that weirdness within humanity, that sheepness of them not wanting to stand up for what is right. That cheapness that refuses to say, like that small child, hey, the emperor is naked.
Fear of repercussion.
Yeah.
Fear of the consequences of what will happen.
And that's what that kid that had the Academy of Ideas channel, if I remember, I'll put a link. Really, really good stuff. Makes you think. He gives me, hope.
Yeah.
That there's other kids like him. I don't even know what his age group is. He may be millennial. It doesn't matter. He's thinking for himself, and he has a platform to where he's getting others to think for themselves. And God bless him. Mm-hmm. And he was discussing this sheep mentality that people have. And if you have the one or the two that stands up and tries, that can encourage others to stand up and try and say, no, we're not. So, kid, final thoughts?
Sheep mentality gone right.
Well, it's a matter of those sheep. I don't know.
They see one person standing up. Somebody else stands up.
Yeah.
Another person stands up. So you got 3 people standing up at that point. More people are going to rise up.
Absolutely, because these are human beings. Even the most broken ones, they are human beings. Now, those that are at the top, or they think they're at the top, I don't know. If you have made yourself totally devoid of any aspect of God, are you still human? If you no longer can experience love, compassion, forgiveness, empathy, are you still totally human?
Those that are part human that are good.
There's
those
people
that are part human that are for the bad.
Yeah. There's people that look human and they're not.
Human, but not quite.
Not quite. That's what I was told years ago. Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt and overstep on your final thoughts.
No, that's it.
So, yeah, it was a bitter cup today. And it was a full 20-ounce mug.
Not only that, it was above my educational grade.
No, it wasn't. You understood in your spirit and your heart. You're not a stupid kid. Never have been.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah. So, if you've had experiences with the paranormal or supernatural encounters with UFOs, aliens, cryptids, send us an email, cupofcoffeewithscream@gmail.com. References will be in the description box. Yeah.
Yep. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, comment, and most of all, subscribe and click that notification button for daily notifications of our daily uploads. Thank you all, and have a good... But wait, send your recommendations for videos too.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, you can always share links and stuff. That's always cool stuff. And just, topics. If you find something and see something and we don't, please feel free to share those.
That's a recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, this is fine. Pray one for another. If you see somebody out here doing something they shouldn't be doing, pray for them. And it's a hard thing to pray for our leaders right now. And it's one of those, sometimes the prayer is like, God, stop them from doing evil. Yeah, sometimes the prayer is, God, smack them down. Yeah.
That's been my prayer for a minute.
It's like, Lord, help us. Please help us. Yeah. Know that you're loved. If anybody or anything tells you that you are anything other than a beloved child of the Most High God, that's a voice of the enemy, tune that out. Because you are loved.
Yes.
And Lord willing, we'll see you on the next cup. Bye.